loyalty. If you were faced with a dilemma of choosing between your country or your greatest friend, what might you decide? Additionally, how might you feel if your loved one may be heading down a dangerous path, yet your warnings are unable to pierce their pride? In Julius Caesar, Shakespeare displays these scenarios eloquently and shows how extreme the results can be.
In Julius Caesar, we are introduced to who is written as his best friend, Brutus. Brutus's love and respect for his friend is very well enforced throughout the writing. However, he is quoted in Act 1 saying that although he loves him well, he would not like to see Caesar crowned. This introduction of conflict delves into a man versus self scenario. Cassius sees this and begins to spin a tale that shows and biases his own beliefs that Caesar is a coward and would do great harm toward Rome if king, and that he and many others would rather see the crown be given to Brutus. Despite loving and respecting his friend, Brutus does not want to see him crowned king in fear of what may happen. He allows Cassius to manipulate his feelings and turn it into a drive for the beginnings of the plot to assassinate Caesar.
In this part of the story, Shakespeare is showing the internal conflict a very loyal man like Brutus would have in the extreme of a scenario. In this part of the story, Shakespeare is showing the internal conflict a very loyal man like Brutus would have in this extreme of a scenario. He is caught in between loyalties for either his country or his friend. When he allows himself to be persuaded into thinking Caesar would be unfit for the crown, Brutus showcases how his loyalty for his country exceeds what loyalty he has towards his friend. He allows the persuasion of others to sway him, his own faith and trust.
Despite being the victim, Caesar is not without his own faults. Throughout the play, he is given multiple warnings by both his followers and his own wife. Even when confronted by soothsayers, whom are thought to have knowledge of the future, that tell him to beware of the specific day he has to travel to the capital, he does not listen and instead insults them. Despite his wife's pleas, Caesar continues on to the capital where his assassination is set to take place. A soothsayer is there to beg him not to continue, but yet he carries on. This showcases how blind his ignorance and pride made him. He tosses his wife's words aside and ignores the others willfully. He doesn't want to make an excused absence from the capital in fear of what that may make him seem like towards others. This only confirms his demise.
3.
This is another case of man versus self, and even man versus man. Caesar ignores any kind of suspicion he may have, even when bombarded with warnings and omens. He assures that the gods are testing his bravery. He even goes as far as requesting that priests test in theory and perform a ceremony to inquire about the fate. When the results come back and further implanted This is another case of man versus self, and even man versus man. Caesar ignores any kind of suspicion he may have, even when bombarded with warnings and omens. He assumes that the gods are testing his bravery. He even goes as far as requesting that priests test the theory and perform a ceremony to inquire about the fate. When the results come back and further implement how he should not leave, he still chooses to ignore it. His arrogance and pride blind him to what is blatantly obvious to his readers.
Done?
No.
Sorry. I'm going to start this part. His arrogance and pride blind him to what is blatantly obvious to most readers. He does not want to seem cowardly in the eyes of his peers. So he risks his life for his reputation. This seals his fate when his assassination is carried out and he is killed. This seals his fate when he is assassinated. Oh, that's actually okay.
In this play, we see prime examples of human nature. It shows how imbalanced our loyalty can be, even when thought to be the most stable. It also delves into how our own personal feelings can get into the way of what is best for ourselves and others. Shakespeare is arguably best known for his tragedy-themed works, and Julius Caesar is a prime example of why. I thoroughly enjoyed the way it was written and performed. I will be reading more of Shakespeare's work, as this was a wonderful read that I have and will continue to recommend to others.